So I recently made a video about the problem with modern Pokemon designs, and let's just say not everyone agreed with my hot takes. But now that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have been out for a while, I think it's safe to say that there is a major problem with a lot of the new Pokemon designs introduced in these games. And no, it's not just because Meowscarada looks like a human in a fursuit. Before we start this video, I just want to clarify that these are all my own opinions, and Pokemon designs and art in general are extremely subjective, so if you don't agree with me, that's okay. But if you do agree with me, why not consider subscribing so you can keep up to date with all my other irrelevant hot takes. Anyways, how do we even tackle a topic as controversial as Scarlet and Violet's Pokemon design? Firstly, I think it's important to point out that there is no such thing as a perfect Pokemon, and everyone has their own opinions on what a Pokemon should look like. After all, this franchise is 25 years old, and it was inevitable that these designs would eventually change over the years. But in my opinion, there are a few key areas in which the overall philosophy of Pokemon design has clearly changed. Pokemon were originally designed to be pocket monsters, fictional creatures that you could believably encounter out in the wild, and their designs were also interlinked and grounded in this philosophy that it rarely broke people's immersion. The world of Pokemon felt like one big ecosystem. But what changed? For me, the earliest memory I have of seeing a new Pokemon that brought my immersion into question was when I first watched Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. Luckily enough for me, seeing this new Lucario Pokemon blew my mind. I was enamored by it. I couldn't understand why this new creature looked like a wolf, but also looked like it could be my best friend. Its humanoid design was perfect. I connected with it in a way that I never could with older Pokemon like Blastoise or Charizard. This new creature had become my very own anthropomorphic self-insert. An 8-year-old Shadow thought this two-legged, aura-wielding wolf was the most badass thing he'd ever seen. But if Pokemon like Lucario got an anthropomorphic pass from people like me, why is it that a lot of us still end up having problems with Pokemon like Meowscarada and Quaquaval? Well, if you compare the Pokemon of Generation 4 to their Gen 9 counterparts, most notably the starters' final evolutions, it becomes pretty apparent Empoleon, Infernape, Torterra, and the rest of the Gen 4 crew are often seen as the second coming of Christ to most fans, and a lot of us even rate them higher than the original 151. The Gen 4 starters maintain their monster-like appearance throughout their evolution line. In fact, most of the Generation 4 Pokemon still follow the original design philosophy of trying to make sure each Pokemon feels like a pocket monster, and that really drives home the narrative that all of these creatures could coexist in one big ecosystem. Very few of the Pokemon introduced in Generation 4 are humanoid, and it's because of this that the more anthropomorphic ones like Lucario and Gallade go unnoticed. They're just diamonds in the rough, and it's somewhat believable that a small handful of Pokemon would eventually adapt and evolve to the point where they would become more humanized and less monstrous. But this subtlety and nuance is completely lost in Generation 9. Scarlet and Violet introduced several new humanoid and anthropomorphic Pokemon, and although I still like the designs of Pokemon like Ceruledge and Armarouge, for the same reasons 8-year-old Shadow loved Lucario, I can't help but notice that all the subtlety and nuance is gone. Both of these Pokemon look like they could be armor upgrades for the main character to wear rather than actual creatures living out in the world. They almost seem like RPG character classes, with Armarouge being the gunner and Ceruledge being the swordsman. And this style of design has been a major issue for a while now, with Pokemon like Delphox resembling a mage rather than a fox made of fire. However, this doesn't quite mean these designs are necessarily bad. I quite like the idea of having Pokemon based off specific archetypes like swordsmen and wizards. It's just a pity that these designs tend to be too humanoid and too common. I'd rather have Pokemon be designed as creatures first and then have the RPG theme implemented, because I'm starting to get sick of every second Pokemon looking like a D&D self-insert. Speaking of humanoid Pokemon, why is it that nearly every new starter's final evolution has to be bipedal? Blastoise, Charizard, Typhlosion, and Sceptile are all perfect examples of bipedal starter Pokemon done right. They all still feel like creatures, and that's because their designs try so hard to convey that they are still wild monsters, and not your two-legged best friend who plays football with you. It's also not only the starters who are affected by this. In fact, if you go through all of the new Pokemon added in Scarlet and Violet, you'll see that a lot of them are bipedal, and even the ones that aren't just don't look like monsters to me. Tarantula, Nimble, and Palmy are all cute Pokemon in their own right. But of course, Game Freak had to make their evolutions bipedal, because having immersion in your fictional world of monsters is bad, and having Pokemon that look like they could shake your hand is good. And let's not forget how fucking creepy Meowscarada and Quaquaval look. I know it's a meme, but Meowscarada kinda does look like a dude in a fursuit, and it's really hard to believe that my cute four-legged weed cat evolved into something that would try and hug me at an anime convention. As for Quaquaval, yes, I know its design kinda slays, but with the way it's animated in game and how over the top and eccentric it is, it's kinda hard to believe that this Pokemon is actually a creature that lives out in the wild and isn't just a TikTok cosplayer dressed up as a duck. Oh, yeah, you're probably wondering why the tone of this video has completely changed all of a sudden. Well, isn't it obvious by now that Game Freak would rather design Pokemon to be funny little gimmicks instead of fictional monsters? The majority of new Pokemon added in Scarlet and Violet seem to all have some sort of quirky gimmick going on, to the point where it's kinda hard to take any of them serious. Did Game Freak want to design a fictional ostrich, or did they want to turn Lady Gaga into a Pokemon? And is Golden Go a complete piss take, or did someone see the cheese string mascot and think it would make for a great Pokemon? I swear, every second new creature added to this game feels like a meme. Like, why did it take 25 years to add a dolphin Pokemon, only to evolve it into fucking Superman? Like, am I the only one who wants Game Freak to take these creatures seriously, or am I just too old to be playing these games? Surely I'm not the only one who thinks designs like Flamingo, Earthworm, and Bellibolt all feel like they were created for a Saturday morning kids show, instead of a 25-year-old RPG where fictional monsters fight to the death. At this point, it feels like I'm developing Stockholm Syndrome for half of these new designs, because Pokemon like Dashespun are so stupid and derpy that they're actually growing on me. And I can't tell if that's because I've just given up and embraced these new child-friendly designs, or if the joke of a dog covered in hot cross buns is just that genius. All jokes aside, another major problem I have with Scarlet and Violet's Pokemon design is the fact that for a region based off of Spain, there doesn't seem to be that much inspiration taken from the real world country. Sure, Paldean Tauros is clearly based off a Matador's bull, but Tauros was designed way back in Generation 1, and this is basically just a reskin. I wish we got to see more of a Hispanic influence, because whoever designed the Smoliv line knew exactly what they were doing. Speaking of good designs, the concept of Paradox Pokemon is great, but of course the ancient forms are way more fleshed out than the future forms, which just look really uninspired and are basically just robot versions of older Pokemon. Great Tusk, Roaring Moon, and Slitherwing are all great examples of old designs being reimagined in an interesting and creative way. There's also tons of amazing fan creations of Paradox Pokemon being made at the moment, such as Bulby Boy's Iron Hunter and Burning Worm, which are both fucking phenomenal and really show off how much room for creativity there is with these new Pokemon forms. Also, while I was editing this, fellow Irish YouTuber TotallyNotMark released a great video where he showcased professional artists' redesigns of some of the Scarlet and Violet Pokemon. One of the biggest things I noticed was how Vivink Art was able to redesign the entire Frigibax line in a way that was much closer to the design philosophy of the older generations. And honestly, their reimaginings are 100 times better than what we actually got. I'll leave a link to this video in the description, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone who's just as disappointed with Gen 9's Pokemon designs as I am. Overall, I feel like modern Pokemon design is becoming overly simplified and childish. There are way too much humanoid and anthropomorphic Pokemon being added, especially in this generation. The Pokemon of Paldea are also a big missed opportunity when it comes to designing creatures based off of a real world location. Sure, a lot of the new Paradox Pokemon are great, and I hope we get to see more of them in future DLC. But can Game Freak please stop making every second Pokemon bipedal? And for the love of God, please stop adding ridiculous gimmicks to your monsters. And that, my friends, is some of my biggest problems with the new Pokemon designs in Scarlet and Violet, in my opinion. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel as it really helps me out. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter. I hope you've enjoyed this video and let me know how you feel about the new Pokemon designs in the comments down below.